Hey, this is Josh Habermann, Artistic Director of the Santa Fe Desert Chorale, and I am so happy to have with us today a very special guest for our next episode of Chorale Conversations, Craig Johnson. Craig is the conductor and founding Artistic Director of Conspirare, which is a wonderful professional choral ensemble based in Austin, Texas. He's also the director of Cincinnati Vocal Arts, an artist in residence at Texas State, and also ran the graduate program in choral conducting at the University of Texas at Austin way back in the 90s, where I was his student for a couple of years and he was my grad advisor. A sweet memory and a great time. So it's a real pleasure to welcome Craig to our show today. Craig, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much, Josh. It's awesome to be with you and all your guests.
So Craig, there's no particular focus to today's talk except for two choir guys who love the art form to just chat a little bit about where we are. And I want to start with where you are. How are you doing in this unusual time that we're living through? And how are you showing up each day for choral music? And how's that feeling for you?
Yeah, of course, it's such a strange time. It's such a difficult time for so many. And like many, I feel like one of the very fortunate ones. There's, personally, a safe home to live in, and I've been in good health and, a refrigerator with food. And so, I'm totally blessed and privileged, and I'm so aware of that. And so, I have had opportunity too during this time to perhaps be quieter with the schedule and to have time to reflect and to there's a kind of a coming home to myself in a way that I have felt, and even a coming home to music actually that has felt very real for me and like a real gift. So certainly when I think about what we do with choirs and the music we make with ensembles of beautiful singers, yeah, man, it's been a lot of grieving actually, because we had to cancel two reps, and we're looking out to a year where we just don't know when we will be able to sing again. So we don't anticipate in-person performance anytime soon. And so, I guess I just say keeping it real. I'm trying to meet this moment, meet these circumstances. These are the circumstances of our lives right now. And so, I've been feeling a lot of sadness about that. I miss that music making. I miss the engagement with each other. I went into this. I'm a pianist from birth, kind of, and I thought that's what I was going to do. But I think one of the reasons I really went into this as a profession, ultimately, and I left piano as a kind of career track, was because I wanted to make music and be with other people more and not be in a practice room by myself all the time. And so I miss the relational aspect of it. And so, yeah, and we're trying to do all kinds of things to stay connected. Of course, Zoom sessions with singers to stay connected, and times to have conversations, and having one-on-one conversations with folks, trying to engage with collaborators and composers, and of course with listeners especially, who are really feeling this loss a lot right now. I think so much about our community of listeners, both locally and around the nation, and they are missing out on a great deal right now. This has been what we do is a source of great nourishment and inspiration and joy, comfort for so many, and to not have these touch points too is a time of loss. So anyway, there's a lot in this time, but those are a few snapshots of kind of me in this time of COVID.
Yeah, thank you. You talked about the relational aspect, and that's something that is so interwoven in choral music and the interpersonal nature of it. And that's something that I relate to so strongly to, and that I find myself missing. As much as I miss the music, I really do, but I miss just as much or maybe even more that sense of belonging to something bigger than myself, the interpersonal relationships through which the music is made. And I wonder if you might say a little bit more about how that is for you and how that fits into your culture at Conspirare.
It's a primary aspect of this music making, isn't it? Yeah. I just know, even just being here with you this morning, I was so looking forward to it. obviously it's a great pleasure just because of our history and because I admire and love you so much and love the Desert Chorale so much. I feel like we've had such a special kind of, I don't know, friendship, ensemble friendship over many years. I think about relationships way back, when I was first getting this all started, this thing called Conspirare. It used to be called New Texas Festival, and then it was New Texas Music Works. But Larry Banfield came and did a retreat with our board in one of the first years. So, I mean, from the get go, I mean, I gained so much wisdom from all things coming out of the Santa Fe Desert Chorale. He was obviously very gifted in terms of organizational thinking and musically too, of course. But so, we've had a relationship a long time. And then obviously when you began uh, conducting too, and I'm skipping several chapters, but just to fast forward to say it's very special to be in this conversation with you. I mention that just because it's like a reminder of this relational piece you're asking about, this, the importance of it, the value of it. You and I, and I'll speak for that in the moment because that's where we are. But is we have a relationship that was born in music, and so we share that, and yet there's a deeper aspect even of what music points us to, that we have a relationship and a friendship over the years that has been fostered and nurtured by what music points us to. That is to say, the aspects of being human, all the things that music cultivates in us, meaningfulness, that which is of essential nature in life. We get pointed to that through our musical experiences, whether it's with Bach, Brahms, or with the composer who we've just commissioned, or a new songwriter whose arrangement we might be singing from the time, or all of these musical relationships that we have, which are really of a heightened nature, right? I mean, it's we come together and we experience these. It's not just a daily discourse like, "What are you having for lunch?" and "Glad your house trim is blue," but it's those are all lovely, delightful. But we get to experience these peak relational moments, and then we come down from those mountaintops after a concert or after a rehearsal, and we're aware that that deepens our connection. It deepens the value of all of these connections. So these are a lot of friendships, whether it's with conductor and singers, singers with singers, listeners and patrons, with the musicians, with each other. All of us are kind of gathered around this. I like to think of it like a campfire of essence and meaning and joy, connection, that we've all have our own experience with, and that's the beauty of it. We don't have to dictate this is the experience or that's. Everybody has their own experience of what this art form sparks in us, but we get that experience and then we walk away from it post concert, or and in the in between times we have that remembered sense of the value of our connection runs deeper, and thereby I don't, it just adds so many layers of joy and meaning to our lives. And so we miss that, and at the same time I'm really anchored in it because I know that that essential aspect, the good things we get pointed to and led to through our art, are still present even in this time of separation. And so that bond is still there. It's incredibly special, and so I that's on my mind and in my heart a lot right now. And frankly, the music too, when I spend time with music now, even though it's alone for the most part, the music calls me back to that sense of relationship, that sense of community. And I find it just exquisite. I mean, I think we're so fortunate. So it's a piece of what's on my mind and heart.
Thanks. Yeah, there's a refreshment to step away from something, to not have something that you have for so long. And not that you would ever take it for granted, but it becomes part of a daily rhythm. And then when that daily rhythm changes, or that thing necessarily goes away for a little while, it's that much sweeter. And that absence, makes our feelings deeper around it. That's certainly something that some of our listeners have shared with me, some of our community, in Santa Fe, where they'll say, "We can't believe the summer's coming. We're not going to hear the chorale this summer."
Hmm.
Because it's a touch point for them. It's part of their experience of the year to be lifted up and to be renewed in those feelings and those connections to things greater than themselves that you're talking about. And so
Right.
they're grieving that, but how wonderful it is to have that reflection, to say those things are still there.
Yes.
And those things are still present. And of course, we can listen to recordings or play individually. I've started playing the piano again, and I haven't played in a while. And, I'm getting back to just playing preludes and fugues and things like that at the piano, just
Mm,
and experiencing them anew, as you said, and it's a really meaningful thing.
mm, exactly. And your comments are kind of a tee up to we do take it for granted. I think we can fall into that, right? I mean, I think we don't want to, and that's, but when we are together, it's so easy. I mean, that's one thing that we do as busy modern people. We're running around doing our things, and even these things of such beauty. I mean, I, I was just thinking about flying in an airplane and the astonishment of that, and how people who travel a lot
Mm.
forget the sort of kind of the miracle of that, the extraordinary nature of that. And so it is with music, like, yeah, it's so extraordinarily special. And I know I've taken it for granted when I'm so busy and running around as if, and this has been a stopping, a real stopping to say, oh, wait a minute, it's acknowledge what it is we're actually doing. And I sure hope we can get back to it soon, but yeah, in the moment, it's nice to have these moments too. Like, we would not be having this conversation. You'd be busily preparing for the season, and I cherish that we get to sort of talk about this together, fellow artists, about what this time means. And it's good for us to say this is what we're experiencing. This is the meaning we find in it. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the joys of the academic life is a sabbatical, and I remember having the opportunity to do that some years ago, uh, and how meaningful that was, just to have the luxury to unplug even briefly and then experience it all with different eyes. And
Mm.
and now no one would wish for the experience that any of us are going through, particularly those that are facing the health challenges and loss that so many are. But if we're looking for that silver lining, I think it's there for us,
Mm.
in that unplugging, especially in our culture in the United States. I certainly have fallen into this over the years. And as you said, victim to the busyness and the culture of engagement or recognition or whatever form that may take.
Mhm.
Um, and to just simply have that sort of put on pause and to say, okay, what are the foundational values here, and how can we, though we never disconnected from them, how can we renew and re-strengthen that connection to them, so that we're informed when we do go back, and we will. That music is going to start again, and all of this will come back. That we don't doubt. But what will our experience be like, and how much sweeter will it be when it does?
Yeah, so true. I've said a number of times just to folks that, can you imagine, just feel into for the moment the incredible joy we're going to feel the first time we get to enter, first we'll say, a rehearsal space, and feel like we can do that safely, and we can make sounds. I mean, just even the thought of it brings me a lot of happiness. And then being able to have an audience where there's a connection, where I just the joy is great, just even thinking about that. And you're right, we will be back there, and hopefully uh, sooner rather than later. But it's a beautiful thing in the moment that we are parting to. It's an expression of how we care about each other in the moment that we are separating and staying home or staying safe, doing whatever we can. And I know we're all watching too. There's a lot of creativity right now. I just had 3 emails from companies making these sort of choral singer masks, and I don't know if we'll end up using them or not someday. But I love that there's just this sense of how much we love this. They're all signs to me of, this is a very special art form. Yeah.
You've been really successful over the years in creating a listening community, not just attracting the nation's best performers, and you do that, but you've also had wonderful success in creating there in Austin a circle of listeners that is so willing to go with you, to be interested in new music, interested in traditional music, and just sort of accepting and trusting that Conspirare experience. And in some ways, the chorale in Santa Fe is a similar history, a longer history, but also a dedicated circle of folks who are just so much a part of what we do. It's not just the performers and whoever's out there, but it's year over year the same faces and the new ones that come into the circle as well. And I wonder if you can talk just a little bit about, what is that relationship like for you with the listening audience and with that community in your context there in Austin?
Hmm. I really enjoy the the community you're speaking of. It feels like a wonderful journey that many people have taken together with us. And I know this is so true in Santa Fe. Back in times when you were doing your doctorate too, I believe we sang in Santa Fe. And even at that time, I mean, that was a special off-season concert. The university chamber singers were just on tour. And we happened to be featured or presented by Santa Fe Desert Chorale. And even then, it got a sense of what it is, this like a culture of listening that surrounds a group and comes together for the shared love of, in this case, choral music. And um, I experienced that in Santa Fe then, and of course, that's only deepened and grown and expanded in these years, and particularly now that you've been there these years. So yeah, it's a very dynamic, um vibrant kind of relationship that I find here in Austin. We've been lucky, and it's a listening kind of a thing too. And again, here we are back to a relationship again. But I think when I first came here, I came from the Northeast, and also I'd been in Germany, and I was fresh out of just like every weekend I needed to do Bach cantata and or you name it, but something maybe from a canon or something that I was just, and Austin was really shaping for me in that way. To say, we'll meet you halfway. Bring what you got here. Bring your traditions, and bring, I'm Scandinavian too, so there was just I have a lot of traditions and repertoire that I kind of came with, but it was very shaping for me to have this big music community. Um, and it's not like it's just one big community; it's a lot of individuals. But um, I remember someone saying early on to me in Austin, we take our work very seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. And so there was an aspect of that that was just really great. And I think you were very attracted to that too, as a Northern California guy. And it was great. Yeah, bring the rigor to the craft and bring rigor to the work that you do, but get off any pedestal you think you might need to have, and just enjoy this journey. And that's been very much my experience with the listening community here. I think it's a very rich thing to experience a group of people that grows over the years that trusts you. And so it comes to build trust, because we've tried a lot of different things, and you could say have successes and failures along the line, but there's been a commitment to, the dynamic choral art. That's a phrase we use a lot, just that making music at a very high level with a spirit of responsiveness to one another, care, love. Um, so really being in the community together, but saying we're in this for the long haul, and um, we're here for the music and what it does for us. And so let's be open, and you don't have to love it all. You don't have to, whatever you love or don't love, hang with us, because there'll be something else coming around the corner. But we're interested in it also being this grand living symbol of the diversity of the world, and the human family. And to say, one of the reasons we want to be commissioning new works and trying all kinds of new things, also musical styles that aren't necessarily, for example, my own or the singer's own, and we want to be spreading our imagination, expanding our imagination, and opening our hearts and experiences to the broadest kind of repertoire offering possible, because that also helps us build bridges with people with each other to learn from their experiences, hear their stories represented in poetic offerings and uh, through musical offerings. So this is a way that we experience the broader human family, and I can think of no greater goal, even in a sense, that we can experience and strengthen our connection through these musical experiences, as well as it just being a pure experience of music itself. So and I have watched the Austin community here grow and deepen with that, so that, and I think they get that with us, there's a sense of integrity about the music making, and there's a sense of commitment to a kind of high level of music making, but utterly without kind of musical snobbery and with a sense of joy and discovery. And I would say also, Josh, like a willingness to fail, like a willingness to try things. And I insist on that kind of, I mean, as much as I have any control over any situation, which is none. But I like to say that I insist that our audience members be open. Like if you don't love something, no problem, but give it a listen. I insist. This is the Conspirare House, and I want you to give it a try. You might just like that broccoli. And and I think because of that, we all sort of bump into each other. And you've certainly been a part of these, and you know about our Christmas programs are sort of very eclectic. And I never gave them a name, but they've kind of been come to call collage experiences and collage programs. And so we sort of just adapted that or adopted the name based on what others were calling it. But that also was its own kind of way of creating these programs where, I used to say the Johnny Cash lovin' singer will sit with the martini sipping Episcopalian, will sit with the spirituals loving, will sit with the, let's be together in a room and let these musics sit next to each other and see if that can also just be its own experience in being together as a larger human family. And so we've had a lot of fun with those at Christmas, and we always bring a guest in each year to kind of shake it up for us, someone who's doing music that we might not otherwise. And so it's, yeah, but anyway, it's a great audience, and I know you have that experience in Santa Fe with such a devoted group of beautiful listeners. Every time I've been in Santa Fe, I witness it, I experience it, and it's such a special group surrounding the Desert Chorale.
One of the joys that I've always found in choral repertoire is that it's so broad, and there's
Mm.
so much to choose from, as you said. Points to what you just said, that there's spirituals standing next to new pieces, standing next to popular music, old music, chant, the whole thing. And one of the things that I've always felt an affinity with was the idea that a group should do everything. Even if you do, as you said, even if it's not yours, it doesn't belong to you, it's not what you grew up with, to have an experience of it, to enter into it. And that's always been what the Desert Chorale's been about since its founding with Larry. They've always never been a specialist ensemble. It's not early music, it's not new works, it's really everything that we can do, that we can do reasonably well. And your group Conspirare is very much dedicated to that too. And so there's an affinity there. And I think it also draws a certain kind of singer. And it's not surprising that there are a lot of singers that go back and forth and perform with your group and with Santa Fe as well, because they're drawn to that sort of eclectic nature and the ability to just taste everything and try it all. And so I know from a Desert Chorale point of view, we benefit from the existence of groups like Conspirare and from our other peer organizations, because our singers are growing through that. They're having experiences that they bring to us. Perhaps they've experienced with us that they then bring out to other groups. And this sort of national choral culture develops. And, you and I have seen this since we were together at University of Texas, 25 years ago now. We've seen this blossoming of choral culture in our country, and it's an extraordinary growth. And I think some of it is because of these professional choirs that are somehow feeding and seeding each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just so grateful for Conspirare and for the work that you do, because not only for the beauty that you bring into the world and because it just fills me up and inspires me, but also because it benefits us and it helps us grow and learn as well.
Hmm. That's wonderful. I agree fully with you about that, and I think it's interesting, of course, musically, but I think just from a professional development standpoint, what you're referencing to is one of the things I know I was interested in asking of singers when we were first starting, because I didn't see it a lot, was this stylistic adaptability. I mean, not everyone is made for this, and again, we all have different roles, and there are specialist ensembles and specialist conductors, and and in another life, maybe that's a path I would love to take, because there's, for example, the Baroque repertoire is so vast and broad and deep that you could spend, many lifetimes just immersed in it, and many people do that, and it's so great, and those are roles to play. And I think a lot about all the Scandinavian literature that have been so devoted to, and that could be a lifetime of just focus. But with these particular ensembles, you're right. I've certainly with Conspirare made different choices because I was interested in that stylistic variety, and also I think it's very interesting. Part of the development of this professional choral culture has been about to the development of actual technique, for singers. First, it's awareness and sort of a commitment to say, let's see. It was a real experimentation, because when I first started, not everybody was believing it. Like, no, we can't do this. I sing opera. That's what I do. And this will hurt me if I do this. There were all kinds of technical things that we had to have real conversations about. Um, I can fast forward. I mean, there's so many chapters to think about in those conversations. It's just a wash as I say that. But they were important conversations that we had consistently, and I would have them with singers, with voice teachers, with directors of schools of music, to say, I believe there's something different. I think we can expand this, our technical capabilities as singers. Um, and boy, has that just blossomed, as you're speaking of. And now we have professional training programs. We think about, well, I'll just mention Yale for one, the Voxtet and the wonderful training that they're really doing. Like from day one, I used to say, this is really chamber music. So this is chamber music for voices, what we're doing. And we need a training, like there are instrumental chamber music programs all across the country, but not for voices. And now there are. And they get real, as these beautiful singers who come from that program and many others now. Some of them are summer programs, but there are year-long programs now devoted. And I just learned about one last week that's going to start up in a year on the West Coast. And so I think it's thrilling to sort of be a part of that. And our lifetimes are short; they have limitations, so we can't do it all. But I think this commitment to that stylistic diversity is great fun. I think it's enjoyable for the audiences, and it's interesting for me. I have kind of a specialist inclination. I mean, like I could burrow into something for years, although probably most people would be surprised to hear me say that, because I've kind of lived my life as a, whatever we want to say, a generalist or something, broad spectrum. But I made a very specific commitment to that early on. But um, I do find the interest and the variety is to be very thrilling in our audiences, who are all kind of growing up. This is old-fashioned language now, but when Conspirare was building, we were talking about the iPod shuffle, and people would just let these mixes play. And I used to think about that a lot, because most listeners, I've encountered very few who I just want to hear Renaissance all day long, all day long, all day long.
Mm.
Even the sort of most devoted sort of early music people, their playlists are very, very varied and diverse. And and I think that there's more of a truth there, when truth be told, if we can kind of keep our deeper principles in place in terms of performance and the work we do, whilst we enjoy the universe, through this repertoire. It's pretty awesome fun.
Yeah, you're talking about breaking down boundaries, and for me, that's always been a big piece of the attraction of this particular art form. you know, because as devoted as you can get, as devoted as I am to Swedish choral music of the late 20th century, or whatever tiny microcosm that fascinates me, and I can go down a rabbit hole with. Ultimately, for me, I've always been attracted to breaking down boundaries. So whether it's boundaries of repertoire, oh, we do this but not that, or interpersonal boundaries, singing together. We know from science that there are alignments, physical alignments that happen. But I think, more importantly, spiritual alignments that happen between people. And these boundaries that seem so firm and seem so clear between us, that divide us and separate us, are revealed to be so ephemeral and so fleeting when we're in that sacred space of singing together or hearing or receiving music. There's a magic spell that's cast over us that I think reveals something that is much deeper. And and I know, this is something that's motivated you as well. And I've certainly had that experience many, many times, doing music with you or hearing you do your thing. So um, that's just such a beautiful aspect of this particular art form,
Mm.
and something that I think people long for.
Mhm.
We can live very siloed now. It's quite possible, and of course, whether that's through spiritual tradition or social class or race or whatever it is, we end up in our own bubbles. And now more than ever, because so many of us are physically more isolated than we would otherwise be. So I think we're longing, and I find myself longing for that feeling again of boundary breaking, of merging, of feeling that bigger universe.
Mm. Boy, that's really well said, Josh. And right now, during this time of great upheaval, certainly first from COVID, but now during this time when we are experiencing uh, a deeper, I guess, a louder, even revealing of the incredible wound of systemic racism right now. I mean, even now this is such an important thing for us to be acknowledging the power that music and choral music particularly can have, and also to be looking at the ways that this art form has contributed, to the systemic racism. I mean, and it's as a practitioner, I find it too. I mean, I would definitely say I get older and older, and I want to keep saying I'm just mid-career. I mean, who knows? Doesn't matter. But I mean, the older I get, the more I'm so grateful also for the refreshment uh, that comes from really being willing to like be humbled and to have find a new perspective. Right now I'm trying to really be, as many of us are, in a listening mode as a person of white privilege, and is a time when I just want to say on every corner, Black Lives Matter. This is terribly important. This choral music offers us this opportunity too to really examine, and to examine internally too, within our institutions, within our organizations. How in any way have we contributed and participated? Because you're so right, talking about the power of this music to sort of transcend these boundaries. We know this, and yet there's more we can be doing to engage it too, because it is so powerful. And we can do it without having to preach sermons or have political discourse, around it all. We make choices that will impact how we perform, who we perform with, whose music we perform, all of these things. And I have so much to learn. I want to keep learning and keep growing, but um, powerful topic for long conversations that we want to be having, and to really engage music at the level that you're speaking about, because it's a vehicle like few others in terms of its potential to really be a healing device. So I love what you're saying.
Craig, it's so great to spend this time with you. Really appreciate all the beautiful work that you're doing and the beauty and great leadership that you're bringing to our art form. And just want to say thank you on behalf of all of us at Santa Fe Desert Chorale for being such a friend to the chorale, and personally as a friend to me as well.
Oh, thank you, Josh. So, and let me just say thank you, and first to you. I admire you so greatly and love you a whole lot. And and then just to Santa Fe and the Desert Chorale community, the singers, the listeners, the patrons. What a privilege it is to be in conversation with all of you. And I love this organization so much. We truly are. I am, and we are as Conspirare with you. And I'm so grateful for the time together. Thank you for this.